You're listening to Impact, a Temple University podcast about service, sacrifice, and Temple made.
So what's your favorite movie?
My favorite movie I would say is Malcolm X by Spike Lee. I think it dropped in like 1992. I've seen that movie more times than I can count. So definitely one of my tops. One of the biggest ones for me.
What was it about that movie that is your favorite?
The storytelling.
Oh.
It was the way Spike Lee portrayed Malcolm X's life, and it was done very thoroughly. From my perspective, my opinion, it wasn't, so linear. In terms of his life, it wasn't just the activist, right? The Muslim. It was the criminal. It kind of delved everything into his past, and he did a very good job with that. I learned a lot about Malcolm from that film. So,
Was there anything about that film that influenced you in the way you are today?
in a sense, I would say one of the things that kind of standing your ground in terms of who you are, and I know this sounds corny, but like in the face of like adversity, when everybody else is kind of doing one thing, you stick to your guns. And Malcolm X, there was a pivotal point in his tenure with the Nation of Islam, when he was under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and he found out certain things about Elijah Muhammad that didn't go with the principles of Islam, and instead of sticking with that nation, he branched off and did his own thing, and a lot of the brothers from the nation kind of were threatening him and stuff like that for making a move like that, but he kind of stuck to his guns and stayed the course. So I admire that about him, and that's something that I try to do, and it influences me actually in a lot of things that I've done in my life, including when I was in the military, and it influenced one of the things that helped me get out the military when people were telling me not to do it. So I just yeah.
What inspired you to join the military? You were in the Navy.
I was in the Navy for 4 years. So what influenced me, initially was service to the country. It was very patriotic reasons initially, and also to get my education benefits to go to school. Couldn't afford school, so it was kind of a stepping stone for me. And I come from a military background. Both my parents were Air Force, and my two older brothers were already in the Navy at the time. So I was the last one to go in. So it was kind of just like a rite of passage in a sense.
What if you didn't join the military?
What would I be doing?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
What would your family think?
I'm sure they wouldn't care. My family, my mother, and they're very supportive, and we've always kind of just let us do what we wanted to do in terms of our life choices. But in terms of what I wanted to do, if I didn't join, I got to be honest, I don't know. Like being in college now, and being almost 29 years old, and being around people that are 10 years younger than me, and when I was that age, I did not have anything figured out. And it's not to say that one of these students, they have it all figured out, but they talk like they do. And I know I didn't talk the way these college students did. So I didn't have a clue. I was kind of just flying by the seat of my pants at that point. I just wanted to have fun, party, just do things like that. I was kind of directionless in a sense. The military was kind of my way out. And it was kind of like a really big way for me to just switch things up for my lifestyle. So, and then from there, I started figuring things out. From after I joined the military, I started figuring things out for myself. After learning a lot about myself. Yeah. long-winded, but yes.
So your path to military service was one of patriotic. What does that mean to you?
Um, Patriotism.
Yes.
Um, just feeling like it's a feeling for me. It's more of a feeling like I'm doing something bigger than myself, and I'm contributing to the greater good. It was there's a lot of propaganda that a lot of the branches put out, and you see it on TV. The Navy's motto back then was a global force for good, and the movie Battleship had come out at that point,
That
and
was a good movie.
I actually, yeah, I enjoyed it. Sidebar, interesting point. One of the ships that got blown up in that film, the USS Samson, that was the ship
Yep.
that I was stationed on.
Wow.
So yeah, that was really weird to see. But anyways, yeah. So yeah, back to what I was saying. So yeah, it was just a feeling of doing something bigger than me, and yeah, yeah, it was just that, and then also I wanted to be able to explore and just learn different trades while in. So
So, what were some of the things that you learned from learning while you were in the Navy that sort of intersected with lessons that you learned from Malcolm X?
um so like I said before, kind of like standing your ground in terms in certain situations where you probably shouldn't, but you're doing what you think is right. Uh, um I mean, other than that, that was like the biggest takeaway I had. I can't really think of anything else off the top of my head. From my military experience that intersected with Malcolm X's um ideologies or practices. It was mostly just his approach to things, to adversity. In terms of I in terms of what I learned personally, outside of um the influence of Malcolm X, the film, or just his life in general. I learned to ask a lot of questions, to never just take what people say just for as the truth, and if I'm being completely honest, I mean, being in the military, everybody has different experiences, and people come out the military different people, and the military really changed my perspective. I ran into so many different personalities when I was in, honestly, I describe it as like the Game of Thrones. Because there's a hierarchy. Obviously, you got rank, you got structure, and you have people that have to do certain things, and um one of the biggest things I learned from being in the military was being able to, I guess, weave my way through certain situations and do it with tact. And yeah, just be careful in a lot of certain situations, if that makes sense. It's a very vague answer, but yeah,
It's a life lesson also. Once you
definitely.
leave, it stays with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, as someone who went into the military and now you're done with military service, and as a student, you go through this transition period about kind of like questioning, who am I? What do I do? How do you deal with that identity conflict? Or how did you deal with that identity conflict
Just trying to figure out who I was.
versus who you are, or who you are?
It was messy, Bhavesh. It was very, very messy. I have to be completely honest. It wasn't anything, it's one of the things people always used to tell me. Oh, like, oh, you got to know who you are in this world. Know yourself. And these are things I've heard when I was a kid and when growing up. And I thought it was just the most simple thing to know who you are as a person. But man, I went through like a quarter life crisis, I think it was called, trying to find out what my purpose was. And I thought it was the military. I thought I was going to make a career out of that. Then I got out, and then I thought it was going to be acting. And I still do believe that. And then I switched majors. I switched majors twice since I've been at Temple. So I'm just trying to figure things out. And the hardest thing for, I guess, the transition. Well, first of all, before I even got out the military, I was thinking about, like, I had a few months left in. I was like, what am I going to do? I don't know what I want to study. And I'm not even joking. I love Chadwick Boseman as an actor. I love Denzel. And I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to try acting, but I never had the courage to do it. So that's literally what I did in terms of, once I got out the military, I enrolled at a community college just outside of Seattle, and I took an acting class. I've never acted in my life. So in terms of transitioning, I think, and this is my advice to anyone that's thinking about, getting out, separating from the military. If you don't know what you want to do, if there's anything you've ever wanted to try, even if it's something that just sounds so ridiculous, something that sounds childish, that doesn't seem practical, just go for it. Just give it a try. I mean, it can't hurt to take a class. It can't hurt to, kind of dip your foot in that world, because you never know what could happen. You never know what kind of people you could meet, the experiences you'll have, and how it could most of all change you as a person for the better. And that's what I believe acting did for me. I mean, there was a lot of fear involved getting out the military, because a lot of people were saying, it was during COVID, and job market was a mess. And that was one of the scariest things for me, was getting out and not knowing if I'd have a job, blah, blah, blah. But another big thing was, again, trying to figure out what my purpose was. And that's my advice to anybody getting out. It's difficult, but just dip your toe in something. Just try it, because you never know what could happen. So that's my advice, and that's my experience from that.
Yeah, I mean, having students take a risk in doing something that they haven't done anything before in their life, or trying something new, can always be a challenge, or can be a scary thing, especially if they were in an environment where that was not very supportive. And it's something simple as, like you said, trying a new major or taking a class, or even thinking differently it could be a little bit of a daunting challenge. Does the does being in the Navy, obviously you travel all over different places. Where was your favorite place that you've been to that you would like, I want to go back there?
Oh, wow. I, I would have to say the Arabian Gulf. We had the opportunity to go to a few different places, Qatar, Qatar, Bahrain a couple times, Oman up in Muscat up there. And I would say Oman was my favorite place to go. But I'm just going to generalize and say the Gulf, just the culture out there was super dope. But Oman was one of the cooler places I ever went to. And one of the crazy things about being in Oman is I had some of the best Mexican food I've ever eaten in my life out there.
How does that happen?
There was a guy. I'm not sure
There's
if he
always a guy.
Yeah, there's always a guy. But there was this guy, and I'm not sure if he was a Mexican citizen or an American, but for whatever reason, he came from the Americas, and he went out there with the goal of creating this restaurant with really good Mexican food. And we happened to stop by this place, and we were very, very inebriated, and the food was amazing, and we went back twice. But another one of the cooler aspects was the dress. I'm not sure what it's called, but there was like these outfits that a lot of the people out there would wear, and there was like a long, I don't know what to call, it wasn't like a shawl. It was like a long white kind of like dress is the best way I can describe it. And we a lot of us on my ship, we went to a store, and we bought the outfits, and we had the head wraps and everything, and it was really cool. It was a cool experience. Kind of try to find a way to integrate ourselves into that, at least from a visual standpoint. It was cool to kind of immerse ourselves that way into their culture just a little bit.
Was it an accepting environment?
It was an accepting environment. Yeah, it was an accepting environment. We didn't really get, other than like the markets, we weren't really bothered too much. A lot of people in the markets would, they were trying to sell things to us, and us, me being African American, I mean, they didn't know that I was American, but they could probably judge based off the way I was dressed. We stuck out like sore thumbs. But we got a lot of attention in the markets, but it was very accepting. Yeah, it was really cool. Something that we actually, a side note, is that every time we pulled into a certain port, regardless what country it was, whether it be in Asia or in Africa or in the Arabian Gulf in the Middle East. There are certain traditions that you know certain cultures abide by in terms of the way they dress and how we need to present ourselves when we walk into these countries and we pull into these countries. So we just had to be respectful of their culture as well. So I think that's something that helps keep an open mind as well when you're going and you're traveling and kind of doing your own thing. But yeah, they were very accepting.
So what is Robbie up to these days?
Robbie's writing. Robbie's writing. Obviously it's finals right now, so I'm really busy and I've been kind of taking a little break. But I have. You should see my apartment. It's a mess on my table. I have not a mess. It's very organized, but I have 6 screenplays, 3 of which I've finished. One's actually a short, like a little short narrative story I actually told, and then the other 3 I started and haven't finished yet. And for whatever reason, I just keep getting new ideas and I just keep starting new screenplays, and I stop in the middle. But it's just been a lot of writing, a lot of picture taking, and I'm trying to find ways to get grants and basically fund my own production for a short film that I wrote. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. Also, I recently just switched to film as a major a couple weeks ago. So I'm going to graduate with a BA in film, and I'm actually really excited to start learning about directing techniques, screenwriting, formatting that's proper. Acting as well. I mean, I like to act. I love to act actually, and I'm really in producing. I'm cinematography. All these things it's pretty dope to think about. I want to be like Spike Lee and kind of do my thing like that. So, yeah, that's what I've kind of been up to. That's what's going on with me right now.
This was something that you've always wanted to do, but were afraid to do in terms of acting and getting into film and media. I remember we had a talent event in the MVSC, and you took a big leap there.
I remember that. Yeah. Yeah. So, that piece that was interesting. Yeah, and I think that piece literally it personified everything that was kind of going on in my brain, and it was a visual representation of the internal conflicts I was having in terms of wanting to pursue my dreams. And it was 2 sides of me. There was a practical side. There was a side that was telling me like, dude, just do something that makes more sense, quote unquote, right? I mean, it's cool to want to write and be an artist or whatever, but like this is the first time you've ever done it. So what makes you think you can actually succeed? And then the other side was more of a dreamer side or a creative side, and that side it was constantly butting heads. And I learned over time, for the first time, I gave way to the creative side the second I stepped on stage and did it in front of the entire theater department. For one of my classes, I did that exact sketch, and I think in that moment, that's when I subconsciously kind of gave way to that creative side of me. And it's something I think about a lot, actually. And yeah, yeah. It was very scary. Again, I had never been on stage in front of that many people. There's so many things I had done in my life that were just scary and frightening. But somehow, even being in the military, being in harm's way, going on deployments, all kinds of craziness that we got going on in the world. And somehow me getting on stage and chasing my dreams was it was the scariest thing ever. But because there's a huge mental gap that I needed to bridge in order to really step into the shoes I felt that I was meant for. And when I finally did it, it was a huge sigh of relief. And I finally felt like, hey, I am an artist. And I've always been reluctant in my life to call myself that because I feel like it's something to be revered. To be an artist is something, that is just, I put it on a pedestal. It's such an important part of our society, art, whether it be literary, performance, dancing, music, whatever. And because of how much I respect the word art and what it means to me, like I said, I was very hard pressed calling myself that, but in that moment I called myself an artist. And I have a journal, and I recommend people get a journal and you write your thoughts down. And I always write sometimes like, yeah, I'm an artist. Sometimes I actually write it down just to see it. And I have to keep telling myself that I am an artist. So, um, yeah. Hope you guys took something from that.
So if we kind of go back from where we started, there was a Robbie who had no idea what he wanted to do in his life. Then there was Robbie who joined the military for patriotic reasons and being in the military to make sure that he is consistent with the family's tradition of military service. Then there was Robbie who left the military and is now a student. Then there was Robbie who decided on a different career path. And then there was Robbie who had this big dream about being on stage and being in film and media, but was too scared and took this big leap. And it seems like you found your voice.
That's a dope transition. Finding the voice. That was a really good transition, Bhavesh. But yeah, that's 100% true. And like we talked about before, what I was talking about before about trying to find your purpose, being messy, all those things you just said, that's a lot. It's a mouthful. And just saying it was a lot. Imagine living it, and moving from state. I drove cross country, from the West Coast to come out here to Philly to do this. I don't know anyone out here. I don't have any family in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania. So I don't have family for, 200 miles. So I took a really big risk coming out here. So in terms of me finding my voice, the second that I even a sliver of hope that I actually had something I found within me, I'm acting on it. I don't care. I don't care. If it's something that I truly want, I'll drive 2,700 miles, literally, across this country and packed up my entire life. So, yeah, this is something I take very seriously, very, very seriously. And, yeah, I definitely feel like I found my voice, and maybe a few months from now, my mind, everybody's minds, I feel like we're constantly changing. I mean, everyone's minds are changing. You're evolving constantly. It's growth, and but with that, I feel like I'm gonna be able to grow within this art form. And the way I act might be different. The way I write might be different. And with this growth, with these experiences in life, that fosters this growth. The way you look at things is going to be different, and I think that's going to be shown in my artwork and in the way I perform. So that was a little weird tangent I just took, but yeah, just I'm just kind of, in a way, some of these things that I say on this podcast, I'm kind of talking to other people, but I'm also reaffirming it within myself in a sense. So yeah.
When you came to Temple University, did you ever expect that this is what your outcome might be? Or actually, you came from California, right?
So I was stationed in Seattle
Okay.
for a little over 4 years, and then like I said, I got out the military out there, and and then I moved to Southern California to stay with my brother for a little while. And when I was out there, I was working at Amazon, and I was trying to figure out what college to go to, and I was hell bent on going to a college in the West Coast. There's this place called Santa Clara University up in the Silicon Valley near the Bay Area, and that was like my number one choice. And I had 2 or 3, 4 other colleges that I had applied to. I think Temple was like my second choice, and I got into all the schools. And I had a conversation with my parents, with my sister, and because I was, for whatever reason, having doubts about going to Santa Clara. And I don't even know why. It was a school I was like dead set on going to. And I chose Philly. I chose Philly, mostly because of the diversity and it's in the East Coast. It's near New York, and there's so much going on. The city is popping. You know, there's so much going on in the city, so much culture, and I feel like it was a better fit for me, even though it's a way way bigger school. But I'm enjoying it so far. Everybody here is super supportive. If I'm being honest, definitely Bhavesh. But yeah. That's yeah. I'm sorry. What was the question?
How did you end up at Temple?
Yeah. There you go. See, I just start talking and then just, but that's how I ended up at Temple. Initially to pursue a degree in theater, and then I switched to African American studies, and then from African American studies to film, and that's where I'm at now. But what I said before, that's how I got here. Yeah, it was a weird journey.
It always is. It always is. So, your screenplays that you've been writing about, there's one particular one that you wrote that was pretty awesome.
Thank you. So, Table 22. Yeah. So go ahead. Go ahead with your question.
So you shared it with me, and I read it, and by the time I was done, I was really wowed. I was like, it was incredible. I don't want to get too much into the narrative, which you can share from your perspective, but I was really very impressed. I mean, the only other screenplay I read was Pulp Fiction, and I love watching movies, and when it comes to short films, this was a story that was so compelling, and it really fit with some of the few things that you kind of talked about in terms of identity and finding your voice and who you are and where do you see yourself fit. So I thought it was pretty interesting. I really wanted to get your thoughts on what inspired you to write Table 22 and what was it about? Like from your perspective, like what if you want to share, how did you come about writing Table 22?
Yeah, no. So Table 20, I kind of is just crazy, but I dreamt it up. The whole premise of Table 22, and I'm just gonna give a little exposition here. Um, it's basically what would it be like? How would I react if I was if I was put in a white person's body and given all the opportunities in such a tumultuous time as Jim Crow 1950s United States? Because living a life like that back in those days, between being black and white, it's two different worlds, literally. So that was the thought that it just crossed my mind at some point, and then I just kind of had a dream about it, and literally I just, that's kind of where I went from it. That was the premise. Now, in terms of what inspired me to write it, I didn't really have much of an inspiration other than that thought. There are a lot of movies that I've seen, a lot of things going on in the world, with a lot of the movements in terms of, social justice movements, just the killing of unarmed people, the whole George Floyd thing. I mean, that was one of the more, that one left a really big sore spot with me. But I felt that it's an important piece because I feel like it's a question that a lot of people may have. It's a scenario that a lot of people may think about. And with this film, there are decisions that have to be made. And the main character, Langston, is faced with a choice to be perceived as a white person in in the 50s, and be seen as a white person by all of white America, and remain an African American and perceived as an African American to all, everyone that's black. And he would basically get the best of both worlds. And this is a conundrum that I've always had with myself. Would I forego being being an African American and be perceived as a white person for all of time to gain that favor? Or would I just, remain black to everybody, and go through all the oppression and everything that happened to African Americans within the next however many years? And this is a question I've always had for myself. What would I do? What would you do? It's a question I'm asking you. I'm posing it to the audience. Everyone reading, And when I get it produced, watching, we'll be faced with that question. But it's not so on the surface. It's easy to just say, yeah, of course, I'll live both worlds. No one that's black will ever know anyways. I'll keep up the good fight, and, I'll use my opportunities as a white person to get a position in government, or, help African Americans and fight the good fight. But I think human nature comes into play once you make that decision. I feel like we all want to say that. We all have that mindset, like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll look out for my people. But I think there's so much nuance to that. There's so much depth to living two lives, two divergent lives. And like I said, it's on the surface, it's an easy no-brainer. But you really need to let this choice, this decision marinate in your heads. And that's what I wanted to do with this piece. I really wanted to make people think. And in effect, hold up a reflective surface to themselves. Because you find out a lot about yourselves based off the decision you make. And it's a very serious piece. There's humor in it. There's tragedy in it. And at the end of the day, you see what choice my main character, Langston, makes at the end of the day. But that's the objective that I was trying to get at with this piece. And I really hope people understand what I'm trying to do with it. So, yes, that is table 22. Yeah. And if I'm being honest, I had a lot of fun writing this screenplay. I had so much fun with it. Like, it took me like a day and a half to write it. Like, it was awesome. It was really, really awesome. And one of the harder parts for me in this whole process wasn't writing it, because I enjoyed it. The harder part was sharing it.
Taking that risk.
Taking that risk. And you know how it started? It started with the MVSC, the office upstairs. Just not even sharing the whole screenplay. I just told people about the concept, gave people an elevator pitch, and I told Miss Deborah Powell Wright. I told Christy. And I told Andre. I told several other people, and they were like, dude, that is like next level. And, I had my doubts about, well, will they get it? Will they see what? It was awesome.
It was.
And that is really what inspired me to give my screenplay to you and to other people, so.
It was when I was reading it, and after I got done reading it, it was very you kind of take the reader. Well, I traveled through Langston's perspective. Like, I was in his shoes. It felt like I was in his shoes, and it was a very difficult choice. At the end of the day, it was a very difficult choice. Like, how do I proceed with my life? And those kinds of identity issues are real, very, very real. Do I lose myself, who I really am, or do I take on this new persona of who I think I really am, or who I want to be? And who knows what is the best? But one of them is a genuine view of oneself, and the other one is an ideal view of how I want to be.
Yep.
But do you think that the genuine view can maintain that genuine self and get to that ideal self?
That's up to you. I think that's up to you as a person. I think it takes a significant amount of mental fortitude to be able to stick with that genuine mission, that mission you really want, right? I will help my people. I will use this favor to help my people. I will not get lost in the favor. I will not get lost in the opportunities. That is something that is, I think it's very difficult, because like I said, you're in two different worlds. And, you can't be tethered. In my opinion, you can't live in this is just the way I look at it. You can't live in two different worlds. You can't be tethered to one world and tethered to another one. You have to choose at some point. And I know myself. And I think you really need to know who you are as a person. Or I think I know myself. I'm trying to get to know myself. But I think you really need to know or have a good idea of who you are as a person. Because like I said before, we all grow, we all evolve, evolution of thought. And things change over time. It's inevitable, you know, especially with influences in your surroundings. So when you get favor, when you're around a bunch of how long would it take before you start adopting certain rhetorics, ideologies, you know? When you're living in a world of opulence and affluence and everything you see living in the world of a white person back in those days, right? And then you go back to where, you know, you're from, his being south side of Chicago. And you see destitution, you see poverty, you know, you see oppression. Don't you think after a certain amount of time, after seeing these two different worlds, your thought process will change a little bit? That's just my opinion. That's just how I kind of perceive things. And it's up to you as a person to, like you said, stick to the original plan. Either you look at these differences in this world, in these worlds, and you decide to do something about it to help your people, or you kind of just get seduced by the finer lifestyle and just just switch up essentially. But yeah. I'm not particularly sure what I would do. I think about it all the time, but that's why I pose this question. I actually asked a few people these questions, and a lot of them, you know, I had mixed answers, but most people were telling me that, you know, they would use that favor, you know, being white, being seen as white, as, you know, a way to help their own people. And I'm like, well, you know, you never know. You just never know. But it's I think it's a pretty awesome question to ask. Very thought provoking.
It is. Yeah, you did a really good job. You did a really good job there. And so, in those lines, when it comes to looking at how individuals see themselves, right? It seems like material things like fancy cars or big houses. Why is that so attractive? Right? Why is it that you know, somebody sees another person and they're like, well, I want that, rather than let me work hard towards it, or let me work for it? Why is it easy to say I want it? Like, why can't I have it? I have to have it.
So I think people say I have to have it. I think because what these nice cars, these houses, what it gives you, I feel like it gives you perceived like status. I think it's a status symbol. And, you know, I think that's a big reason why I see, you know, a lot of people wanting to buy these Benzes and Beamers and all that, even if they can't afford it. I know a lot of people that can't afford certain cars. I've met people that, you know, struggle to pay bills, but they drive a Benz, or they live with their friends, or they have a bunch of shoes that, you know. So I think it's just a status thing, and people want to be seen and perceived as rich, or, oh, I have this kind of money, and they think it'll gain them favor, I guess. But I think it's just a status thing. And I think it's a lot of the times, if that's something you say, oh, I want that, just because of the way it looks, it's very shallow in my eye. You know? Yeah, I think it's very shallow. I mean, a lot of times, you know, you always hear these people, you know, these, you know, billionaires, people talk about Bill Gates, and, you know, he wears, you know, Dockers and drives a Prius or whatever. A lot of these really, really, really wealthy people don't wear their money. And I think that says a lot about people that don't have money, but they are they're bending over backwards to spend money on something they can't afford, just to be looked at and perceived a certain way. I think that says a lot about you as a person. And I think people that do that, you know, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to look nice. There was a period of time in my life where I would buy, I'm not even joking, I bought I used to shop at Saks, and I would buy t-shirts, you know, from Comme des Garçons that was like $125 for a t-shirt. Ridiculous. I was running up my credit card, and for what reason, right? For some brand, some label. Yeah, for someone, because I wanted people to recognize it. I wanted people to be like, oh, you got oh, what? You know, but that's all it was. It was all on the surface. And, you know, as time went on, I realized that it doesn't really mean anything. Someone may recognize it, but in reality, who cares? That's fleeting. That's material things. It's whatever. That doesn't really matter. And since then, I've been just wearing just like the most basic, I wear Adidas track pants. I don't really dress up too often, but yeah, I think it's a certain mentality. I think a lot of people need to get themselves out of, or should get themselves out of. There's nothing wrong with buying nice things, like I said, but if you can afford it, nothing wrong with it. But if you can't afford it and you just want to get nice things just to have them, I think it's just a status, thing in terms of that. So that's just my opinion. That's the way I kind of look at it from my experiences and everything like that. Do you rock anything like that, Prada or any Gucci?
No, I mean, I have, I love watches.
Okay.
But most of the watches I have were given to me as gifts. But when if I do spend money, I think of it as investment, as value. So if I were to spend $1, I think about it like, how do I get $1.25 value out of it?
Trying to make $1 out of 15 cents.
Yep,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's material things are material things. They're insignificant. They don't really define anything about a person other than what does it really say? It's like, okay, so what? You can wear fancy clothes, and going back to table 22, it doesn't. The core of that story is, who are you really?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not who are you; it's who are you really?
Really?
Yeah.
What would you really do?
Exactly. Yeah.
What would you really do?
Yep.
People talk a good game, but
Yeah.
people, I talk, introspection I think is one of the most important things. And I think it's one of the more important things you should do. Again, like I said, to find yourself, or something I've had to do for years to try to find myself. And I'm still not there. I could be trying to figure this out well into my 60s and 70s, man. We're still learning at that point. So I think you definitely need to kind of figure these things out and ask questions, interrogate yourself.
Yeah, I mean, like if you look at the priests or the monks, or even in places in Asia or other places where they're constantly meditating on the meaning of purpose, or themselves, or looking for what is humanity, or asking that question, what is humanity? I don't see, I mean, to some extent, you're looking at what's going on in the world today. We're about 50% there of answering what is not humanity.
Yeah.
We've kind of lost our way in terms of, definitely, maybe it's because, perhaps it was always like this and we just never knew about it because of how information flows. But it is becoming more clear and clear that there is a division across the world, in every society, in every country. There is a division about who people are. Who are we? There are some that know that we have a purpose, and then some are assuming that what their purpose is. So it's an interesting phenomena to see unfold.
My opinion about that is, I don't think you need to look to anybody. Again, this is just me. You don't need to look, or you shouldn't look to anybody to tell you what your purpose is.
But that's what's happening, though.
Yeah.
See, that's where I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
And saying that, like, there are people who are looking to others for a purpose, and those people that are put on a pedestal, they're just like us, human beings, and they're flawed.
Mm-hmm. And that's where I think you find it shows the type of character, the type of person you are, to, instead of taking because I think that's the easy way out, is to ask somebody these questions. What is the meaning of life? Or
and you follow them blindly.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think it's up to you as an individual to do the dirty work, and to do this, like the psychological dirty work, and figure it out yourself. And I know that sounds like, well, how am I supposed? This is something that my mom always tells me. My mother always tells, just keep living. Just keep living. I'm always asking questions like, well, what should I do now? I don't know if I want to act. I'm thinking, African Americans, because I'll be able to get a job. Well, I don't want it. I don't like, African American style. I kind of want to do film now. I just like, what do you think about that? She throws her hand, just keep living. And I would get upset. I would get irritated because I'm like, Mom, why can't you just give me a definitive answer? Why does everything have to be so cryptic with you? Why can't it just be cut and dry? And what I learned from that is literally what you're saying. You got to figure it out on yourself, man.
Yes.
It's up to you as a person. Don't look to me. I'm a grown ass man. Sorry for saying, ass, but you're grown, you're grown as hell, and you need to figure this out. Stop coming to me for answers. Now, I can give you advice and I could try to, tell you based off of, my experiences. And then you take whatever you get from that and then you chart your path. But I think the reason just keep living. Just keep living because you'll figure it out. I promise you will. You have to do the dirty work. You have to do the hard part. Don't turn to others to tell you what it is, what the world's meaning is, what my purpose is. And like I said before, it was one of the hardest things to do for me is to figure out my purpose. It was so messy. It is so messy. And you need, as people, to have the courage to just get messy with it. Because nothing is linear. Your purpose in life is different than somebody else's. It's a spectrum. And it can mean whatever to you. It can mean whatever you want it to mean, essentially, is what I'm getting at. But don't ever turn to somebody to tell you what the purpose is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. Yep. Even religion doesn't tell us what our purpose is, but what it does is that it gives us a guide.
Yeah.
Of how we best should, in some context, live our life. Right now, whether anyone who's religious, follows that or doesn't follow that, but it's almost like a manual for a life. But even then, we still have to figure out our own purpose. And if we're not doing that, then we're living in someone else's reality, and that's where I see a lot of issues in terms of conflicts happen.
Yeah.
Because it is someone else's reality. We get entangled in someone else's reality because we don't have our own way. We never went through that introspection or that inner struggle. And like you said, taking the easy way out. Let me follow what this person, so and so is person doing.
I'm convinced for a lot of people, not everybody, of course not. But I think it's, living a life or living in a world when you're told what to do or to chart this path. I think it's just so easy. It's comfortable. It's comfortable, because you don't really have to think too much. You have a roadmap and it's drawn out like cartographer. They just map it out for you. And you just follow these, sometimes you'll step outside the lines, but you get back on that path. And charting your own course is very difficult. And, yeah. And I've met a lot of people, and I think a big part of, that, like I said, is fear. And, if you can just everything you want is on the other side of fear. I don't know who said that, but that's something that I use again to kind of pursue my own path. Because I'll tell you at one point, Robbie Gazawi, I'm going to end up somewhere at some point, even if I don't make it as big as I want to be, I'm going to land somewhere, and I'm going to look back, and I'm not going to have regrets about what I felt I should have done because somebody else told me. People were telling me when you get out the military, a lot of, just, get a government job or get a degree in business or communications. It's easy. You just, keep your head down and, then you'll rise up the ranks. Or a lot of people were telling me, don't get out the military, do 20 years, retire, get your retirement. Like, it's easy. Like, just, and I realized a lot of these people, not everybody, but a lot of these people were coasting. They were just coasting. And that's not enough for me. That's just not. And, people that think like that, people that were trying to chart your like that for you. And yeah, especially if you struggle, but I think people like especially that if you're a dreamer, especially if you want to pursue the arts. It's not easy because even your family, people in your family are going to be like, whoa.
Naysayers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember, somebody, oh, whoa, you act? I was like, yes, me, act. Well, I don't know. You just don't seem like, my barber said that to me at one point. He was like, I was in acting class. What? You? And I'm like, well, yes. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's because a lot of people can't see themselves doing stuff like that. And a lot of people can't see what's, beyond what's like right in front of them.
Do you think it's lack of imagination?
What do you mean? Like in terms of why people don't go after certain things, or?
Yeah. So I kind of equated to having I equated to daydreaming. And what I mean by that is that dreaming about seeing yourself doing something that you would normally wouldn't do, and convincing, and then that finding a way to turn that daydream or dream into a reality one step at a time.
I don't think it's lack of imagination. I think everybody has an imagination at some point. We were all kids once.
Yes. Yep. But as we get older, we lose that.
We do. We do. I feel like we lose that. But even then, I don't think it's lack of imagination. Even as we get older, I think practicality gets in the way. Complacency gets in the way. Fear, I think, is one of the biggest aspects of why people don't really pursue. I mean, and of course, other life happenings get in the way as well. I mean, I know people that wanted to be doctors, but they had a kid, so they couldn't go to school full time anymore. And people that wanted to be athletes, and just things happened. Life gets in the way sometimes. So I'm not naive to sit up here and say, I understand things get in the way. I understand life happens. I get it. People have dreams. Sometimes those dreams have to get put on hold, or sometimes you have to find a way to work around that. It's difficult.
Yep.
It's very, very difficult. But the way I look at it is, if you really want to do something, I promise you, you'll do it. You'll do it. I could have just been like, oh, I'm just going to stay in Seattle because I'm already here. I might as well just finish my degree, go to UW, whatever. I already got 45. I might as well just, no.
But we're glad you're here.
Yeah. I'm glad I'm here. But yeah, so like you guys, yeah, you understand what I'm saying. But yeah, just.
Yeah, that's the hard part, is that when there's someone who has a passion, and that passion gets squashed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It gets killed in a series of critiques of you're not good enough or what the hell you're thinking, rather than being supportive of, all right, let's see what we can do. Let's see how we can make this work. Or I may not know everything that you're doing, but I know that I can, get these tools for you if you want to use them.
Which is exactly why something like this, Bhavesh, just being on this podcast, talking about this is helpful. This is so, so helpful. So, in especially in pursuit of a dream or something like that, it's the support. You got, I'll read it. I'll read the screenplay. Wow, that's amazing. That's good. Even if you're like blowing smoke, I hope you guys aren't. I hope people aren't.
I'm not blowing smoke.
I don't believe you are. No. But I don't believe
you
anyone
got my
is.
Feedback.
But I did. I don't believe anyone's really doing that. But just the support is, it means so much. So when people go up there and they make their acceptance speeches, I said speeches.
It could be more than one.
There you go. But they always shout out people who helped them along the way. And it's hard to be a creator because people are always going to look at your work and they're going to want to critique it. They're always going to want to have their little input. But the people that give you a platform, people like you giving me advice. I remember you talked about, I was like, well, I don't know how to, film certain aspects of this because it was in the 50s. And you were like, well, you could look up some archival footage. You can check out the Temple Library. They have things like that. I'm like, well, I didn't even think of that. You know what I'm saying? It's small things like that, Bhavesh, that it's like a catalyst for creative minds. And if you just, that little support, that little, drop of advice goes such a long way. And you just don't know. You just don't know. But yeah, it's definitely the support. Support is huge, at least in my journey so far.
Yeah. So, we want every student to have a dream. here, whether at Temple, we want every student to have a dream and a passion, and we have as a higher education institution, resources are here, and we want to make sure that your passion can be realized.
Yeah. And that's something I've never had. And I'm not saying in terms of my family or anything that they weren't supporting me in my endeavors, but being in the military, it's not an environment that really fosters creativity
Mm-hmm.
or so you can't think outside the box because everything is so be here at this time, be here wearing this uniform. Everything is a regulation. Everything is to the T, uniform. And finally being able to get out of that environment and, like I said, just keep living, having to figure it out myself. Like I said before, it's been messy, but it's been one of the most beneficial things because you guys are fostering here at Temple has been fostering an environment for someone like me and other creatives and artists to be able to kind of spread our wings and use the tools you guys gave us and to help us create. And that's one of the biggest things for me because I never really had that. So now that I'm older and I'm figuring things out and I'm finally finding my voice, this is such, just being in a school in general is awesome. It's awesome. It's right where I need to be. So this is really dope.
When you were before you joined the military, before you joined the Navy, were you a very structured person or unstructured or chaotic or?
No.
Okay.
No. I was a wild card. I just did whatever.
But how is that possible when you have brothers in the service, when your parents are in the service? Like, how does Robbie get away with being undisciplined?
Well, I think we grew up in a strict household, and there was a point in time when my father he bounced, and I think up to that point our lives were very, very structured. We had a 2-parent household, and then it got to a point where it was just my mom. And around this time we were around 13, 14 years old, and we had just got into high school, and now we didn't have someone telling us what to do all the time because she had to work.
Mm-hmm.
Mommy had to work, so the 4 of us, we could do what we wanted. She had to work, and when we came home from school, there was nobody. She could get home as fast as she could, but bills had to be paid. So sometimes she worked, 2 jobs to support us. So that's when that discipline out the window, and we just started wilding. And I'm so glad I kind of got back into the military, and it gave me a little bit more discipline, a little bit more structure in my life. And it all these experiences helped me to become the person I am today. And which is why I'm I always tell myself this all the time. I hated a lot of the experiences I had in the military. I hated a lot of the experiences, yeah, my dad left, but it's just like, I hate that. But at the end of the day, I don't regret any of it because I wouldn't be who I am if these things didn't happen. Of course, I could be living a better life if I made certain decisions. If I would have done better in high school, I wouldn't have to join the military. I could get scholarships. If I didn't party as much.
But would you be a different Robbie in that case?
I would. I can't say definitively whether I'm not sure actually because, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'd be a different person. I think my path would be different. I think I'd be in a different place, physically, and my degree might be different. But as a person, no, I'm not sure actually. I'm not sure. That's like an alternate universe.
That's another screenplay.
Yeah. Yeah. I can get you as co-writer, man. Co-screenwriter. But yeah, I appreciate every experience. Every experience. I think it's as a person, one of the best things you can do for yourself is take trauma the best you can, use it as armor. Don't let something like that really sink you or be an anchor around your neck. You have to find a way to make certain situations, bad situations, and you have to use them. And that's what I've been trying to do my entire life. And I don't think I would have made it this far, if I'm being completely honest with you, if I didn't find the good and all the bad. Because if you just look at it as negative and negative and negative, it's gonna take you down, is my perspective. And that's why, in my opinion, I've made it this far. I was never a great student in the past. When I started college again after getting out of the military, I had doubts. I was scared. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to bomb these classes. But I used those experiences in the past and I was like, no, I'm gonna do something a little different this time. I'm gonna take this a little bit more seriously. And my GPA was a 3.7, after taking, 3/4 of coursework. And I was able to get accepted into all the schools I applied for. I didn't think that was possible because I feel like I'm an idiot. But you have to be able to use these experiences in a positive way. And it'll help you. Don't look at it as a negative all the time. See the blessing in it.
Yeah.
The silver lining. Yeah.
That is true. Adversity does make us stronger. It does make us mentally stronger, that we're able to be more resilient.
Yeah. It's difficult. I mean, it's a crazy world we live in.
Yeah.
But if you really want to, like I said, if you really want to, you'll find a way. You'll figure it out.
Yep.
Just keep living.
Yeah, keep dreaming
and keep dreaming.
Yeah, keep dreaming and find ways to take the small steps necessary to make that make your dreams into a reality. So many people have done it. It's not to say that it's easy. It's in everyone's capacity to do so in some form or another. And you should surround yourself with people who will help you get there, rather than keeping you down or keep telling you that you're not good enough, or question your even passion to be where you want to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Never keep your dreams tucked. Just
share them.
Yeah.
Yeah. The more you talk about it, the more it becomes apparent and right in front of you.
It becomes real.
Yep.
It becomes real.
Yeah, it's a perfect example is going back to that MVSC event, the talent event, and when you did your thing, was like, wow, I remember Miss Deborah saying that you were really good and you were nervous, and doing that was a big deal for you.
I was very reluctant. She told me.
Yep.
She was like, "Hey, would you mind?"
Yeah.
She was like, "We're having this talent event, in the office. Would you mind, doing this performance?" And I was like, "Oh no, y'all don't want it."
And what was the performance?
I
know what it was. But
are you talking about when I was doing going back and forth, or which one?
There was the MVSD talent event.
Yeah, that's when I did the acting, and
acting
I did
thing, yeah.
Yeah, like the identity crisis when
Yes.
I was very nervous. I was reluctant. I told Miss Deborah, I was like, "Nah, I think I'm good. I think I'm good." And she was like, "Oh, okay, cool. So now I'm not asking you. I'm telling you, you're going to do this." And I was like, "Okay, well, we'll see." "No, you're going to do it." I was like, "Okay," and I wound up doing it. But yeah, all it takes sometimes is like just a little nudge. And the crazy thing is, and I wrote this down. I always write little things down, little anecdotes, but I am living my dream. It's hard to see that because I always think there's more I need to accomplish, and there is. We're always trying to accomplish more, but if you take a second to just sit down and look at it like it's a big screen and look at the past and the past few months, I moved to Philly. I'm writing screenplays. I've acted. I'm living my dream, but it's hard to see that sometimes, but I am. So I think that's one of the cooler things about dreaming is once you start pursuing it, you're living it. And it's hard to realize that because you always want to get to that next level. There's always something more to be achieved, but you need to realize you're living it, man. You're in it. You're in the thick of it.
Enjoy it.
Enjoy it, man. Enjoy it. So just take some time, take a step back and just to think about what's happened, your path, your journey. If you need to write it down, write it down. Well, I was in this play and I did this play, but I'm not there. No, you were in a play, man. You're acting.
Can you believe that? Right? Like, wow, I did it.
Yeah. I think our hunger for success sometimes clouds what we've done. It outweighs the things we've accomplished. Take a step back. Just for a minute.
Yeah, enjoy the moments.
Enjoy it.
Yep.
Enjoy it.
Celebrate it. So, Robbie, we've been chatting for about an hour.
Yeah.
It's been really great. Covered a lot of things. It's always a pleasure. Every time we get together, we start on a topic and end somewhere roundabout in some interesting ways.
Yeah. It's like going on YouTube. You want to look at one video and then somehow you're looking at something completely different. Yeah.
Yep. And we'll definitely have to do this again sometime.
For sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure, man. Thanks.
Yep. And maybe next time you'll want to share more about your other screenplays that you've been writing.
More than willing.
For more information on military-affiliated students at Temple, visit veterans.temple.edu.